Yeah. And we're off.
Gonna start the music or?
Connor, God damn it, where are you?
Yeah, where is he today?
I don't know.
Producer Connor's not here. Coming in, Roger. Fire up the amps. All systems go for takeoff in 3, 2, 1. Woo! The claps just kept going and I didn't have anything to say. But I have one thing to say. There's a bunch of really colorful party balloons in here.
In our studio.
I'm not
in
really-
our makeshift studio.
No idea where these came from, but it's quite fitting because I'm ready to party.
Oh, man.
Much like the party in Boudreezy's pants with the salsa he spilled all over them.
Yes, it's true. And before we get into that, Colton, let me just say that your introductions are a source of inspiration for all of us. And if I wasn't ready to party, I certainly am now.
I typically come up with
And
what
I'm
I'm
not
going to
just saying that
say.
because of the NOS.
Oh yeah, yours is a NOS. I went with the amp.
Jerry, there you go. Cheers, buddy.
Citrus?
Here's to another broadcast, our 8th.
Yeah, number 8. I forgot to mention what episode we're on. I'm really off my game. Yeah, you can. I was just about to say we can probably turn off that music. So back for another exciting episode of the Weekly Puck Off. Thanks for all of our dedicated listeners for tuning in once again. We thank you very much. Follow us on Twitter at Weekly Puck Off.
Please.
Yeah, so let's jump right into some exciting action from the week.
Well,
starting off, of course, with the salsa crotch.
The pants. For any of you who listen to us on any kind of regular basis at all, you know we like to end our podcast with the You Blew It and the Top Cheddar. And so my You Blew It for the week has been walking around all day with salsa encrusted on the crotch area of my denims. Because this is the 3rd day in a row that I've worn these jeans.
And how long ago did you eat the salsa? That's a real question.
Embarrassingly enough, I think it was 2 nights ago as opposed to last night.
So this has been like a 72-hour trip of salsa on pants.
That's right, that I failed to notice.
Okay, well, on that note, speaking of failures, who blew it the worst this week as far as teams go in the past week's worth of matchups? I think you have to go with the Leafs.
Yeah, absolutely.
No sooner did we mention them on our podcast, we finally bring them up. I actually said, I guess now we can maybe include them in the discussion about playoff picture. And then they go and lose 6-2 to Buffalo and 9-2 to Nashville in back-to-back games. I mean, at least Nashville's a good team, but 9-2?
Leafs playoffs. It's the funniest thing I've heard all week. If you want to compare what the Leafs week has been, and I guess we don't want to be too hard on them because they did beat Tampa Bay after all last night.
They're still in the picture. I mean, it's only 2 games. A loss is a loss, a win's a win, so they're still in the hunt.
One gets the sense that if we're going You Blew It with this, then there's me walking around with salsa on my pants, and the Maple Leaf equivalent would be like me walking around with a great big turd on my pants.
Because they shit the bed?
Because they shit the bed. Did they. 9-2 against
They
Nashville.
shit their pants.
Wow. But they redeemed themselves last night. They beat Tampa Bay, so good for them.
There's been quite a few good games, especially last night. But I think this week we've reached the point of the season where it's basically the 1-quarter mark for most of the teams. They've played around 20 games.
More or less,
So
yes.
rather than focusing on just the last week's worth of stuff, we were actually going to focus on the last quarter. And we're going to give away the Q1 awards, we're going to call them. Quarter 1 awards for some teams that we thought were surprising, some teams that we thought blew it, some teams that are doing well, some teams maybe not doing so well, and then make some predictions for the next quarter.
We're going to rehash a little bit the first quarter of the season, and here to help us do that is Mr. Takis
Pronunciations
are
Takis
Chelios.
I think it should have been somebody else to actually give you the intro.
Yeah, that should have been my job. But welcome back for another exciting episode of Tack Attack.
Thank you.
He may not have an energy drink, but he's got energy right from the heart, inside out.
Now it's Movember, and Tack, I gotta say, you're looking pretty good in that beard.
Thank you.
Are you going to keep it? I think you should make it a permanent addition.
I don't know. It's
to your face.
We'll have to see. It's a kind of a work in progress, and it drives me crazy every single day.
Oh, man, it makes you look rugged.
Well,
I noticed you didn't say anything about this. I noticed you didn't say anything about my perfectly groomed mustache that I reapplied Just for Men to yesterday afternoon with producer Connor's Just for Men dye that he purchased.
It's just a shame that we don't have the video component to this podcast yet, because Colt 45, your mustache is immaculate.
It's not bad. All things considered, I'm impressed with how I've done.
You look like a Three Musketeer.
Yeah,
I've been told I look 40.
I was thinking.
I don't
more
know
like
if that's what I'd want to.
Tombstone, OK Corral kind of thing, but yeah.
Yeah,
Man,
Doc
that's a
Holliday. I see a
striking
little Doc
mustache.
Holliday in you.
So as far as the Q1 awards, maybe this is like a. I mean, we're 2/3 of the way through November. Do I get like a Q2 out of 3?
For best facial hair? Tak, I think
It's
if you
not even a
maybe
Q.
just
It's more
go with the mustache, and that would be a good face-off, as it were.
a good
Get
puck
it?
off.
Wow.
Face-off?
Oh wait, I see what you're doing. I was gonna say it should be called the puck off, the stash off.
Because the mustache is on your face.
Yeah, this is really bad podcasting. Let's get into.
Quickly segue
Topic.
into the actual
Seeing as we couldn't blend that into our topic, we're just gonna go ahead and jump right ahead to the Q1 awards. And we didn't tell Tak that we're gonna do this, so I don't know if he has anything prepared whatsoever. Probably not.
a lot of
But-
lack of preparation here.
Maybe he can just chime in on the ones that we prepared ourselves and maybe give his 2 cents.
Sure.
Agree or disagree kind of deal.
Sure.
So let's start it off. I'm going to be the host, if that's what you can call me. We'll kick it off. Steve, I would like to hear your Q1 award for the most surprising team.
Well, there's been a few real surprises this year, and a couple that I maybe didn't see coming. But if I had to pick one, it would have to be the Nashville Predators. And I thought that they would maybe improve a little bit this year because they did, sign some quality players during the offseason, and some of their young guys like Sean Jones and Josie and Seth Jones.
Jeez.
My pants
Oh.
are throwing me off here.
Okay.
You know me.
Seth Jones, folks.
Seth Jones, Philip Forsberg, we heard was going to be a regular part of the roster this year. But man, oh man, who could have foreseen that they would be, 12-4-2 at this point? Right at the top of the Western Conference. So for me, the Nashville Predators stand out as being the year's number one surprise. How about you?
Q1 award from Boudreasy,
Q1
Nashville
award,
Predators.
baby. 12-5-2 right now. Sorry, they lost last night to, guess who?
The pesky Sens, but we'll get into that a bit later. My surprise team for the Q1 award, I didn't actually go ahead and look up their record, but you might have it there in front of you. I chose the Calgary Flames,
Yes.
more so because I thought that Nashville might actually have a chance of sustaining what they're doing, so it might not be a surprise come Q2, 3, and 4, whereas Calgary, I don't know if they can. Calgary is my surprise because they don't really have any standout stars other than Giordano, and maybe Brody is starting to come into the picture as a top-tier defenseman with Giordano.
He is.
But aside from those two, they've got a lot of depth scoring, no real standout guys, and they're just finding ways to win. Big surprise team, and that's my Q1 award for the early standout that I didn't expect.
12-7-2 they are. And fourth place right now in the Pacific Division, tied right now actually with LA, but LA enjoys a game in hand on Calgary. Who would have thought 12-7-2?
Not me, I can tell you that. Maybe producer Connor, but he's not here to defend his Flames. So
Right, no producer Connor today.
no realistic human would have expected that except for a Flames fan.
Exactly. Tak, how about you?
The examples that you've given are actually probably the top 2 examples that I would have given. But I'd also like to throw in there the Canucks.
An honorable mention.
13-6-1 right now.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't have. I wouldn't have thought they'd be doing not only that well. I didn't even think they'd be in contention for the playoffs at this point.
I am a Canucks fan, and I didn't see that coming.
Neither did I. I mean, their stats are not pointing to any signs of regression. Really, they're playing well enough that they could be a playoff team, and they should be a playoff team.
They really are, and a big pickup for them was Ryan Miller. And the surprising thing about Vancouver is, of late at least, Miller really has not played that well, and yet they're continuing to win. Their shot differential is 10th in the league, so 10th best for shot differential. I don't know what their Fenwick is like.
Their Fenwick is also 10th in the league, so there's a bit of a correlation there between the two.
So there you go. But in goal differential, they're 17th in the league, and there you have kind of a little bit of the weak link in Ryan Miller. Although I think he's going to bounce back. So consider me very pleasantly surprised with the play of the Canucks so far, and I don't think very few analysts or fans out there would have expected them to be tied for the top of the Western Conference or near the top.
Well, I remember most analysts on Sportsnet and TSN specifically anyway were saying that they just thought that the only Canadian team that would be in the playoffs were the Canadians. So most of the analysts weren't even thinking that they'd be even 8th place, much less where are they now, like 3rd, 4th.
Right now, there are 5
in
Canadian
the
teams.
West.
If the season stopped right now, there would be 5 Canadian teams in the postseason.
which is outstanding.
The only 2 who wouldn't make it would be the Leafs and the Oilers.
I'm so happy I feel like singing the national anthem right now. But I won't.
Yeah, that's probably best saved for the privacy of your own home.
But best saved until I finish this cherry Nas here. Vancouver is second in the West as of right now, behind only the Anaheim Ducks, who they lost to last night. Brave effort from Vancouver. They lose in overtime to Anaheim. No shame in that, really.
Absolutely not. So that's a good honorable mention as our third surprise team.
Can we ask the question, out of those 3 teams, which do we think is going to continue to maintain the pace and continue to be a threat into the second quarter? Or which of the 3 is the most likely to fall off?
Actually, that leads into my my second Q1 award.
Did we actually segue properly for a change here?
I think we may have. Was that intentional?
See, that's experience.
Good job. Yeah.
That's what happens after.
Once
8
you've done your
podcasts.
first 7 pods, then you really start to understand how broadcasting works.
And there's
So
a flow.
we've learned a lot from this. And that leads into my Q1 award for the most likely to blow it in the second quarter. This is a projection now. And that pick was the Calgary Flames. So while they were my biggest surprise team that I was happy to see in the first quarter, I love seeing Canadian teams do well. Unfortunately, I can't see Calgary continuing this. And to support this claim, I did a little more research last night, folks.
Wait a minute now. You did research?
I went above and beyond.
Not only are we segueing, but we're researching?
We've really taken our job seriously now, and I think a
My
lot of it has to
goodness.
do with ever since producer Connor stopped showing up, we've really risen to the occasion, and the pod has gotten way better. Anyway, Calgary ranks 27th in the league in Fenwick percentage, and Fenwick is basically just a slightly different version of Corsi. You use Corsi to measure the percentage of shots directed on goal versus directed against your goal. While that player's on the ice 5-on-5, for teams you're a little better off to use Fenwick because it takes shot blocking out of the equation.
Yeah.
So a block shot doesn't count towards the stats, and seeing as many coaches encourage shot blocks, whereas other coaches encourage cutting down passing lanes and that sort of thing to limit the shots on goal, it just eliminates that sort of discrepancy between coaching styles. Calgary ranks 27th in the league, which leads me to believe that the majority of the chances to score in their games are being directed against them rather than for them. And over the course of a full season, that's very difficult to sustain and still win. Colorado managed to do it last year with similar Fenwick stats.
But a real anomaly when you see a team.
Exactly, and look at Colorado now. Over the course of a larger sample size, they're really showing why they shouldn't have been among the top teams in the West last year.
Boy.
And I'd expect Calgary to drop off similarly in quarter 2.
In addition to that, as well, last year's Colorado team, I think, really on paper was a better team than this year's Calgary team anyway.
Oh, I would agree with that.
Absolutely.
I would agree with that.
Colorado has some offensive studs on their team in McKinnon, Duchesne, Landeskog. They've added Iginla. Tanguay's back from injury. They've got guys who can put the puck in the net. Their troubles lie on the defensive side of things, whereas Calgary's almost the other way around. They don't have the scoring they need, and they rely a little too heavily on their defense.
What is their PDO like?
Calgary's PDO? So this is basically the luck factor. It should be right around 100, assuming
That's the mean average.
all things considered, even the best teams will end up around 100. Calgary is currently at, of course, they got cut off between 2 pages. They are at 102.79, so might as well say 103. So theoretically, their shooting percentage, on-ice shooting percentage, should regress by about 3%, which means even fewer goals will be going in the net for them, suggesting even further that we can expect a bit of regression out of the Flames.
Their shot differential is 26th in the league too. So they're 5th worst in the NHL for shot differential. On average, the other team outshoots them by 2.8. Here's something I'll say about Calgary, though. They've had a lot of injuries because Stasian is out right now. Colburn is out. Who else do they have that's out? Mason Raymond, who had like 7 points in 10 games. He hasn't been around for close to a month now. Backlund, Jones. So they've been making do with a surprising amount of injuries, and
Yeah,
they're continuing to win.
a lot of young guys stepping up as well. But in the long run, I can't see them continuing to perform. I don't want to spend too much time on the Flames. That was about 3 minutes on one team, and we do have a limited time to get through all these.
Yeah.
So now this is going to be an abrupt segue into Steve's most likely team to regress in the second quarter. So
Okay.
the Q2, you blew it, so to speak.
Well, it's really hard to not kind of look at Toronto and think that this is not a team on the brink of some sort of a disaster. I just get the sense that team is about to just splinter and fracture.
Lots of talk of potential coaching changes, making trades. I mean, every time they lose a game, the media in Toronto decides that it's time to blow the team up and start rebuilding, and then they win a game and they start replanning the parade route. It's the same story week to week.
They're just so erratic because they go from having this 3-game winning streak to getting throttled by Buffalo 6-2, which if you're a team that expects to make the playoffs, you're not losing to Buffalo 6-2. You're just not doing it. And then you don't follow that up with a 9-2 embarrassment. And so even though they did more or less redeem themselves last night, I just get this sense that with Randy Carlyle kind of on the ropes right now, that the team morale maybe isn't as good as you'd kind of hope that it would be. And I don't know, the players are saying the right things to the media like Phaneuf is, but I just get this sense that a 4 or 5 game losing streak could kind of be the knockout punch for this team. The other team that I think could have a rough second quarter for a couple of reasons are the LA Kings, because they just had bad news there with Voinov getting charged with domestic abuse. So he's out. Yeah. LA can't replace him because their salary cap's strapped. And LA is a team that traditionally underperforms in the regular season anyways. So...
well, having said that, Voinov has been out for the majority of the season anyhow, and they've done just fine without him.
It's true.
It will hurt them in the long run if they can't get him cleared off their cap space or off their salary cap room, but I don't think Voinov really is a huge loss to the team, considering they've still managed to be a dominant team without him.
I don't know. I wouldn't call LA dominant right now. I wouldn't. If you look at some of their team stats, their shot differential, they're 21st in the league, which puts them into the bottom third. I'm sure their Fenwick and their PDO isn't much better. If you compare what their Fenwick was to last year, you'll see that LA is much worse off so far this season. They've been riding Jonathan Quick to a larger extent than they normally do. Quick's numbers this year have been pretty phenomenal. And he's not normally one of these goaltenders that really sort of stands on his head in the regular season. Usually he does that sort of thing in the stretch run in the playoffs. So I see warning signs for this team. And again, they don't normally play their best in the regular season anyways. So I look for them to kind of have a flat second quarter and then maybe start to turn it on in the third and really ramp it up in the fourth quarter.
I don't think the Kings really care so much about the regular season as long as they finish top 8. They won the Stanley Cup for the first time when they're actually the 8th seed. So.
And last year when they were the 6th.
Exactly. So I don't really think that you're right. I think it's very possible that they do regress because they don't have that kind of eye of the tiger in the regular season, so to speak. Cause
those are all. I like that it was backed up by fact, because at first you said LA, I was like, okay, no. But then when you started getting into the reasons why, I can kind of get behind that as well. I don't think it's going to be as far of a breakdown or a fallout as the Flames will probably have. At least in my opinion, I'd expect the Flames to really fall back to reality and probably play below 500 for the next quarter.
Right.
I don't know if you can say the same about LA, but
no.
Maybe they'll fall back a bit from where they've been now.
In a relative sense, though, let's say they go 500 for the second quarter, which I could see them doing. Is 500 what you expect out of the LA Kings? Not really. Not for a team that's won the Cup 2 out of the last 3 years.
Exactly. All right, so thanks, Steve, for stealing all that time and using 2 teams for your Q2 awards. So I guess that means
let's get Connor back in here. I don't like your production style.
I should have cut you off after round 1, but I do like that though. LA it's a much bolder prediction, and you heard it here first, folks. Boudrezy predicts a fall down the standings by LA in Q2. So I actually just realized that we segued into that a little bit too early because we forgot to say which teams we thought would have already performed poorly up to this point in Q1.
Right.
So maybe just quickly, like 30 seconds on each one, because everyone knows which teams have been struggling.
Right.
Mine was the Dallas Stars. I think they've got a lot of firepower, great goaltender. The defense I didn't think would be as bad as it's proven to be so far, but that seems to be their downfall, and they're significantly below 500. Not really looking like they're in the playoff picture. It's still early. I'd expect them to rebound.
Right.
But with guys like Spezza, Seguin, Ben, Nichushkin's been injured. Hemsky's starting to wake up finally. They've got some guys who can score, and they just can't seem to get it done and put the W's up.
So we're going with these are teams that have disappointed so far in the season, but have a realistic chance of turning it around still.
Yeah, teams who we would have expected to do well that haven't lived up to expectations. So that's my award for Q1 of teams that have underachieved, I guess, is Dallas.
Big disappointment with Dallas, I think you have to say his name is Hemsky. He's been a huge disappointment, and as it is, Dallas is a one-line team. and that's been their downfall. That top line has been great.
Yeah.
Sagan leads the league in goals right now. Jason Spezza can obviously still score with the best of them. In fact, they just locked him up to a 4-year deal just now today.
Yes, I saw that. 7.5 a year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So for 4 years, so they don't have to worry about him being a free agent now. Jamie Benn has been, solid this year, but that's been it. No one else on that team is doing anything.
Yeah, I'd have to agree and disagree with you. I agree that Dallas certainly has underperformed. I think that their forwards actually are pretty good overall. I even think Hemsky notwithstanding, he hasn't done anything that he's supposed to. But if he gets back on track, I think their top 3 lines are actually pretty solid.
Okay.
I know Garba, I believe he's injured right now, but he's a solid grinder, solid third-way player. Roussell's been doing really well. He's got 11 points.
Yeah, he's usually one of those tough guys, but he's been putting the puck in the net a lot more than he did last year. And actually, this Klingberg guy, they've got him up with Spezza and Hemsky. Hemsky has started, when they put him back with Spezza, he started to wake up. He's had points in both of his last 2 games, and Klingberg seems to be fitting in well on that line. So if Spezza and Hemsky can regain that chemistry that they had on the pesky Sens, along with that top line producing, that's a really good 1-2 punch. The teams will have to figure out who to shut down.
Absolutely. And Lettinen is better than his numbers are indicating so far this season.
Yeah.
That's where I was going to go. I think their forwards are fine. I think Lettinen, you can point the finger at him because his numbers have been pretty awful so far this year.
Pretty
by and
abysmal.
large. Yeah. If he were playing to, even... Not even to what he played last year, but even if his goals against average was like a 2.6, that'd be a big difference.
Big difference.
Yeah, they'd probably have 2 or 3 more wins at least.
I went with the obvious one, the Colorado Avalanche. No surprise there. They have been a complete and absolute disappointment so far this season. I even went so far at the beginning of the season to contemplate making them my pick to win the West. And boy, do I feel like a fool right now for even considering that. But can we all agree that what they've shown us so far this season is not comparable to what the roster actually is? And I think they're maybe starting to show some subtle signs of coming around here. Because over the last few games, they've not been too bad. That's right.
Yeah.
And
they're a pretty quality team in Washington.
And they had a 2-game winning streak going before that. I didn't expect Colorado to really be a fierce contender this year just based on their analytics stats from last season. They're still only at a 44% Fenwick, which is second last only to Buffalo, who's you can't really even consider them in the same league as a lot of these teams in the NHL. Colorado, aside from Buffalo, the worst puck possession stats, and you simply can't win games over the long term doing that. So I didn't expect them to be a playoff team. However, I didn't expect them to be this bad with the level of talent they have in their young guys, especially with how well Duchesne and McKinnon and Landeskog and those guys played last year. I'm really shocked that they're 29th. In Fenwick percentage. I thought they'd improve at least a little bit.
It's stunning. Yeah, Landeskog has 7 points so far this season. You've got to think that at some point he's going to heat up. Same goes for O'Reilly. Same even maybe goes for Iginla. I mean, I know the chemistry hasn't been quite the same since they made their maneuvers during the offseason. But, jeez, those guys got to start scoring, don't they? I mean, they have to.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think they'll do better in the second quarter. I like Colton. I don't think they're a playoff team. But they can't do as bad as they've done so far. They can't continue at this pace.
They simply can't.
And like Steve said, they have been starting to improve lately. They started off, what was it? They had 2 wins in their first 10 or something.
Something like that, yeah.
It was pretty shitty, and now they're looking like they're getting close to 500, which is at least showing some sign of improvement. Maybe a glimmer of hope for those Nathan McKinnon fans that we have here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where we're recording this podcast from.
Let's hear it for Halifax. Let's hear it for McKinnon, hopefully getting on a tear here in the second quarter, because I would love to see it. Mac, who's your pick for biggest disappointment?
My biggest disappointment, I think, so far, it's the Flyers. The Flyers have so much firepower. It's unreal. Voracek still leading the league in points. And you got Giroux on there. Simmons. There's so much talent there.
Yeah.
Traditionally, the Flyers start off slowly.
That's right.
And usually they end up making the playoffs by the end of the regular season. So for that, I think that the trend's going to continue. I think they'll pick it up and make the playoffs. And
so maybe that would be
the playoffs, but.
So maybe you give them 2 Q1 recognitions, one for being the surprise poor team in quarter 1, and then also another one for being the top team in the second quarter, one of the top performers in Q2.
There we go.
All right, so now I just segued again, and now I'm going to give my top team in Q2. And this was based partially on my expectations of them before the season started. and comparing that to some of their stats now, pointing in no direction but two fingers straight up. And I'm not talking about middle fingers, folks. I'm talking about the Minnesota Wild. Their Fenwick percentage leading the league in puck possession and shot differential, I believe. Is that correct?
Second
in shot
They
differential.
had been leading for most of the first quarter. Just recently, Chicago overtook them.
Okay. And Chicago is actually second in Fenwick percentage. So those are the 1-2 punch on Fenwick possession stats by quite a large margin. Minnesota, 57% of the time, the puck is being directed at the opposition's net, and they're only playing 500 hockey. Vanek has not done much. I'd expect him to heat up any time now. His PDO is pretty low, which points to all signs of point production increasing. Koivu hasn't done much either. He's back on the top line with Pominville and Parisi, who was briefly injured, if I'm not mistaken.
Concussion,
He was,
I believe.
the concussion.
So he's back and firing. That top line is going to be a force. They've got excellent defense. Kemper's been hot, a little bit of cold, but I'd expect him to continue more along the hot side of things now that the team's playing better. So all things considered, Minnesota, 2 thumbs up, 2 fingers up for increased number of wins.
Here, here.
And Q2 award for my prediction of the top team performing in the second quarter, or at least top improvement over what they've done to date.
I love that pick, and in fact, it's already started to happen because they're on a 4-game winning streak as of right now. They beat Philadelphia last night. Way too much talent on that team to be 500, and I think we all kind of understood that when they were sort of languishing there a little bit in the first quarter, it was a bit of an anomaly because their puck possession stats are so good. They're out shooting the other team every time. Still, if you want to pick one area that's going to get them, it's going to have to be the goaltending because Kemper has looked really, really good at times. He's also looked shaky at other times, and that's not what you want heading into the playoffs. Backstrom has been miserable.
Atrocious, although Harding has cleared waivers and he's getting games back in the AHL before they bring him up to the big show. So if Kemper does start to falter again, they can look no further than Josh Harding, who led the league in save percentage last year.
So he could be the knight in shining armor for that team.
He could, and I think he has the potential to. It's just unfortunate with his MS and his wall kicking incident where he broke his foot that he wasn't able to step in sooner, because I think he is an upper echelon elite goaltender who hasn't had the chance to prove himself over the long term yet.
Well, if he can be that hero swooping in to save the day, then let's pencil Minnesota in as a solid cup contender, because I think that's exactly what they are.
And a sneaky fantasy pickup if you have an extra spot on your roster for if you want to just waste a spot, or not waste, but hang on to a guy for the time being, or if you have an extra IR slot you can pencil him into. Josh Harding, maybe hang on to him for a little bit, see if he pops up and ends up being another elite goalie.
Or even put him onto your watch list, because he's probably going to stay on the waiver wire there.
At the very least, put him on your watch list. I've had a couple people pick him up in various leagues that I'm involved in. They kind of beat me to the punch on that one, because I was thinking of doing the same thing. But not to rant on too much longer about this, we're almost halfway into our podcast and we're still on topic 1.
Tom's is
So,
fine.
Steve, quickly.
Chicago.
All right, so there we go. Chicago 1 and 2. No surprise.
No surprise whatsoever.
Minnesota and Chicago 1 and 2 in puck possession. Also our 1-2 picks for top improvement.
And I don't think I really have to go over the reasons why, because if you watch hockey on any kind of regular basis at all, you know how good Chicago is. You know what their lineup is. They're getting Sharp back soon from injury.
Arguably,
this team is poised to go on a tear, and
yeah.
as opposed to LA, they usually do tend to play well during the regular season and finish at or near the top. I would love to see Scott Darling become a permanent fixture and be their backup. I'd love to see that.
He's a large man.
He's had a couple of good games, but don't discount Ranta, though. Ranta knows how to play. He's good.
Okay.
Yeah, but one thing I'd like to say, Chicago has already started to turn things around
They have.
over the last few games. And do you guys think there's a direct correlation between their winning streak and them placing Brad Richards as the second line center? Finally,
Yeah, good
pairing
question.
him with Patrick Kane.
Yeah, I'm kind of kicking myself for dropping him earlier. I took him as a sleeper pick in the draft, held on to him for a month. He did nothing, dropped him. A week later, they put him as the number 2 center, and Boudreaux scooped him up. So.
I was happy to snatch him up.
Yeah, I think Brad Richards brings a lot to the team, and he's certainly a much more consistent and proven hockey player than the other centers they have aside from Jonathan Toews.
And I think
Toews is obviously the number 1 guy there, but Richards is the real deal. He's not quite at the level he was when he won the Cup in Tampa Bay, but certainly a top 6 center, and every bit as good as most teams' second-line center, if not better.
For sure. And I think, like you say, he's not maybe the player that he used to be. So, in other words, he can't drive things maybe himself anymore. He needs to be surrounded by talented players, which is maybe why he didn't do so well on the third line there. They were hoping that the experiment with Shaw on line 2 was going to work, and things really weren't happening with him and Patrick Kane. So yeah, a real good point there, because I think there is definitely a correlation to that.
Yeah, I think Richards has a lot of talent still. I think he has a lot to offer. For the last couple of years, he didn't perform as well as he did in his earlier years, but let's be honest, he was on the Rangers team, and normally on a Rangers team, players who get picked up or traded to the Rangers, they regress their point totals. Nash is a little bit of an anomaly now with what he's doing, but St. Louis, who was one of the top scorers last year when he was playing on Tampa Bay, got traded to the Rangers, he declined. Nash in previous years, he was lighting it up in 40-goal seasons with Columbus, went to the Rangers, didn't do so well. So I think you can try to remember as well, before Richards went to the Rangers, he was playing on a Dallas Stars team where he had 91 points. And you can't forget that. It hasn't been that many years since he did that. So I think he's still got a lot to offer the Chicago team.
Richards has that playoff experience too, former Conn Smythe Trophy winner when he played with Tampa Bay. So that's another factor for when the playoffs roll around.
So there we go, folks. That's a summary of the Q1 awards.
Oh, do we want to do players, though? Do we want to do players quickly?
What else do we have to get into? I mean, we don't really have much else to get into other than that Pittsburgh segment that we got everybody all fired up about this week. If you tuned into episode 7, I'm sure you've been waiting on the edge of your seat.
We should get Ian Mack in here, too, at some point.
Yeah, see, we've really blown it. We went 31 minutes on this on the first topic.
Well,
but I mean, it's great. I enjoy talking about these types of things. My favorite thing about doing this podcast is making predictions. And in 2 or 3 months' time, I want to come back and revisit this.
Okay.
And everyone can look no further than our podcast for the information on why the Wild and the Hawks are going to do exceptionally well in quarter 2.
Why don't we right now text Mac, and we'll quickly do players.
Okay. I'm going to send him off a text right now.
Biggest surprise for you, Tack, as far as players are concerned? Who jumped out there?
One person who jumps out for me, Jakub Voracek. Who on earth would have thought that he'd be doing as well now?
We knew he was good. We didn't know he was that good.
I thought he was maybe a 70 points for the season guy. And right now...
tied for the league in scoring with Crosby.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and not a lot of people saw that coming, and kind of furthers your point a little bit there about Philadelphia underachieving to this point. I think the biggest surprise for me, I don't know if I'd necessarily call it a surprise because I figured this guy was going to do well this year, but Philip Forsberg, who is leading the league in plus-minus at plus 20 and has 22 points in 19 games. And, yeah, I knew it was good, and I knew he was going to contend for the Calder Trophy, but even I wasn't expecting the type of year that he's been having so far.
I think Forsberg is the consensus pick for the surprise player of the year.
And if you're not going to go with him, it's got to be Laterra.
Speaking of Forsberg, here's the man who just received Forsberg in a trade from Budrizi. We've got Ian Mack.
McDonald, everybody.
Big Red on the podcast for the first time.
Long time listener.
He bleeds red.
How does it feel?
Bleeds red.
I'm just gonna. Sorry for the noise here, guys.
I'll try not to hit the table like the coach.
Yeah, we're all guilty of it. That's what happens when we record the whole thing on one microphone.
Yeah, and we get excited.
That's right.
We like to bang that table for emphasis.
You know what's unfortunate is I had my surprise player written down and I don't think I saved it.
Well.
So I'm just going to have to opt out of this one because we're running out of time.
You blew it, as it were.
But I'll think of one quickly. Sammy Vatanen. I'm going to go with Sammy Vatanen for the Anaheim Ducks.
An excellent choice. Here's what Bruce Boudreau had to say about Sammy Vatanen, because I thought it was kind of funny. And Colt, I know you love the Corsi. So he gets asked about Vatanen's possession stats, and he says, I don't know. I've never looked at a Corsi number. So that tells you my answer. I don't pay any attention to any of that. I can tell by my eyes whether he is playing good or bad. That's what Bruce Boudreau had to say about Sammy Vatanen.
Really insightful commentary from Boudreau. Maybe that's one of the reasons why Solani bashed him so badly before he retired.
Right.
Get with the times, Boudreau. I know you have a good team, but Corsi is relevant.
What was it? What did Ovi call him that time?
Oh, shoot.
It was a bit of lip reading, I think, from the bench, but when he was coaching Washington, I think there was a profanity leveled his way from Ovi.
I think he insulted his weight, didn't he?
Yeah, it had something to do with how in shape he was, I think, and the level of fitness maybe that he's at. So something like that.
Bruce doesn't really seem like much of a player's coach, does he?
He doesn't know.
All right, so maybe before we... Some really good surprise players. We spent about 3 minutes on it. Anyway.
Biggest disappointment. Who's been the biggest flop?
Oh, we've got
player-wise?
that too. I'm going to have to go with, to date, I'd have to go with Marian Gaborik, although I'm not really expecting him to continue being shitty. He's a proven player, too strong and talented to not put up points, especially on that first line with Kopitar and Williams. So I'd also look for him. Now's the time to pick him up in your fantasy league. If you can trade for him, buy low on this guy because there's no way he's getting less than 50 points this year, and I still think he's good for 60.
I went with, there's a couple that I could have gone with, like Mikko Koivu, for instance, Paul Stastny, but those guys are going to come around. I think we kind of realize that. One that may not, because he's been so bad, has been the aforementioned Ales Hemsky.
Yeah, poor Hemsky.
2 points.
I like Hemsky.
It's just not
a
possible.
former Sen, great player. But now that he's back with Spezza, those two did have a lot of chemistry in the red, white, and gold, so
Oh, maybe.
you never know.
Are they on the same line in Dallas?
They've just recently put them back together. Yeah, Hemsky was a healthy scratch in fourth line because he wasn't doing anything, but they put him back with Spezza, and he's had points in consecutive games.
Okay.
So maybe a sneaky pickup, and if you're in a fairly deep fantasy league, slide him in there and hope for the best.
Tack, Ian, what player so far this season has made the bottom part of your stomach churn in disgust?
Well, for me, it's P.A. Parento. But that's just,
Come on.
just because I've got him in my pool and can't get rid of him. But in terms of someone who I think has really underperformed, I've got to point to the Wild like you did. But Koivu, you mentioned, I think Vanek has been a disappointment so
He
far.
has.
And
I'm
he's
still
got to
clinging on.
turn around. One
I'm
goal so
clinging
far
on
this
to
year.
him. I've got him in our keeper league, Tack. I'm in a keeper league with Tack as well. I'm clinging on to him because he was my keeper. I took over a keeper team that was a little on the weak side, so I made a trade for Vanek. I'm hanging on to him, clinging on to that hope that he'll return to his nearly point per game pace that he's demonstrated over the past several years. Not looking promising right now with him on the third line, but I like the kid. I think he has a chance of bouncing back, but definitely agree, big underachievement. Ian, do you happen to have one off the top of your head?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go with, it's kind of weird, I'm going to go with Rennie Bork. And the reason being is the last year's playoff run, he was pretty magic for the Habs.
He was.
I think he requested a trade at some point last year from the Habs based on his ice time during the regular season.
He got one last night, didn't he?
And
Or
eventually he got
yesterday.
his wish. But I just thought that last year's playoff run, he was magic. He seemed like he was finding the net.
He was.
All playoff run.
There was like a 10-game stretch there where you're like, wow, this guy's actually good.
Where did he come from? This was the talent that every team I think that he's been on has been expecting from him. And I kind of hoped that he was going to parlay that into this season, and obviously it just hasn't happened. So yeah, he got moved.
Did you like that trade as a Habs fan? Did you like that in the Gonchar trade?
Love the Gonchar trade so far. I think he's been solid. I mean, anyone who's seen any other games that he's been in, he's been fairly solid. So I have to call that a win so far. In terms of the Borg trade for Allen, Brian Allen, when I lived in Vancouver back in the day, he was coming up through the Moose and then onto the Canucks. So I remember watching him back then, and he was a big kid. He was strong, but he's not going to get you any points. I think his cap was 25 points, was the most he's ever had in a season.
Yeah.
So he's good for PIMS if you're a fantasy player. I don't think he's going to be on anyone's roster, but
No.
he's good for PIMS. He's good for his plus minus is average at best. So to me, I think this is more of a cap space trade. I think it frees up, with the two trades combined, the Habs get $5.2 million in cap space next summer.
Oh, great.
So because Allen there's no protection for movement for Brian Allen. So whereas Bork I think had 2 years left. So this is freeing up space. So
And like they had Bork down in their minor league too. So if he's going to be just hanging out down there, not really doing anything for you, you might as well get a player that
Right.
you can use in return.
absolutely.
Yeah,
so.
and he'd fallen out of favor with management as well, from
Yeah.
what I understand. So if they weren't going to do anything with him, may as well get something for him.
Yeah. I think the question now is, from the Habs side of things, is what happens to Bolio and Tenorti?
Right.
Because you just picked up two veterans, a 30 and a 40-year-old player, lots of league experience, and you've got these two guys that are huge performers in the AHL.
Yes.
What happens to them?
Well, Tenorti's still pretty young.
They both are.
So I think they feel like he has room to grow, and Bolio is too. So maybe that's why they bring in these veteran guys as well, to help the younger
bring them
guys along.
Yeah.
Like I know that Subban, for instance, has been when he was interviewed about Gonchar, has been saying that he's been picking his brain a lot.
Right.
So maybe that's
Absolutely.
partially why they bring these guys in.
Yeah. Even help with the core now. I mean, you think of the young guys, but think of also the seasoned guys and the roster guys that are going to benefit from someone like Gonchar, who's has so much 20 seasons of league experience.
Completely.
It's never going to hurt you. I don't think as long as he's not a liability on the ice,
Completely.
it's a win.
I mean, this is a team that doesn't want to just make the playoffs. This is a team that wants to get to the cup final and go for the gold, so to speak.
They have their eye on the prize. I think you can tell by some of the moves they're making. So,
Completely.
yeah.
And
Completely.
as this is an episode,
Oh my God.
Jeez, I pulled a Connor. Hold on.
Where is the coach?
Just wanted to liven up the energy a bit in here. I feel like we're getting a little bit we're getting too down on the dumps about all these talks of like shitty players and underperforming.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let everyone know that Luongo does make great saves from time to time.
So best teams. Let's talk about the best team so far then, and then we can segue into the next topic of conversation here.
Best team so far this season.
Pittsburgh.
Who we think can continue doing the same.
Well, just who won the first quarter. If we're gonna look at it, which
First
team?
quarter. Ooh,
Montreal.
I would have to say the St. Louis Blues. Personally,
I'd go with Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh is
reasonable
like the
choice.
best.
I just think St. Louis because they got off to a dreadful start and now they're still among the top in the West because they won so many games in a row.
I think Pittsburgh because Crosby and Malkin look like they really, really want it this year. They've been scoring a lot of goals. Their power play has been awesome, leading the league in goal differential, and they've only lost in regulation 3 times.
Fleury, 4 shutouts, looking awesome.
That's gotta be a win, Pittsburgh. I mean, to me, obviously being a partial Habs fan, but an impartial Habs fan, sorry, but the Pens, I mean, they just look so strong. They're going to be tough to beat. They put a beating on the Habs the other night, and I think if they carry that into the playoff run, they could go deep. Especially if they go as Fleury goes. I think obviously they have big stars, 2 of the biggest players in the league, but for me, if Fleury's not performing, the team doesn't tend to do as well as it could. So.
There was some discussion over whether they should even re-sign Fleury, and now he's kind of proving why he's been an extremely consistent regular season goalie for the most part for his entire career. The only thing that's kind of up in the air is his playoff performance. So we'll see how that goes when the time comes because they will be in the playoffs. There was also some doubt over Chris Letang after that stroke he took last year if he could regain that status as a really solid power play quarterback, and he has done that.
Consider his status regained.
He's right back to
He's
where he was.
got to be one of my favorite players. Did you see the pass he made to Steve Downey the other night against Montreal?
Yeah.
He had that shot.
Down to my plums.
If
I
you
can
can
feel
make,
it all the way down to my plums.
Steve,
Let's make.
Loves the
I
button.
got a little excited.
if you can make Downey look good,
Yeah.
you know
which
you've
he
got a
did.
lot of talent.
Yeah.
Downey had a wide open net after that pass.
Yeah.
Right on the tape.
So this is not the first time they've looked good in the regular season.
No.
And Pittsburgh, like
yeah.
Montreal, is a team that at this point they know they're going to make the playoffs. They know they're going to finish high in the standings. They want to win a cup. So they've disappointed us before. Can they actually get it done this year, or is this just a case of them looking good early?
And folks, for those of you who tuned in so dedicatedly last week, this is exactly what you've been waiting for. We're now finally to the point. Tax here. We've even got a 4th member on this discussion. We've got Ian. This is it. Is Pittsburgh the real deal? Do they have the franchise with the pieces in place to win a cup now? Is Crosby the guy that's going to get them there? And is Fleury capable of playing the way he did in 2009, the last time they won?
All right, let's get this conversation started.
Go. Do we have a soundbite for that?
Yeah.
Hi, Coach. Hi, Coach.
Oh, hold on.
Come on. Let's go now. Hi, Coach. Hi, Coach.
All right.
Okay, we really need to up our technology. We're going to need some sponsors.
Let's try it again. Let's try it
There you
again.
go. Fuck 'em, Christ, pop Come on. Come on. Let's go now.
I'll start. I
That
think
was-
they do. I think they do. What usually happens when you get a big deal? If you get a big contract, you've earned your contract. What happens to your performance usually?
Typically, you'd expect it to plummet a little
Right.
bit.
What I don't know. I don't have the numbers, but what are Fleury's numbers since he signed his deal?
They've been solid.
Right. If you think about the trajectory of what he's done after he got his money, to me, I mean, he's always the wild card for me in Pittsburgh. So if he continues to do what he's doing, I think they're legitimate.
it's the regular season. His numbers are always good in the regular season. That doesn't count when you're trying to win the Stanley Cup. It helps in order for you to get there, but in order for you to get to the playoffs, but totally different beast.
Does Dupuis being out for the rest of the season hurt them in such a way that you would think that their chances of the cup diminish
I
to a
think-
great extent?
I think
I
he
think
just
he's
won. He's just one more pawn that gets points playing with Crosby. I think no matter who you put on that line is going to get 50+ points. And Dupuis is just another guy who benefited from playing alongside Crosby.
You probably miss him more in the room. His experience, I think, that he's been with that team forever. So as much as he can get points by playing with Sid the Kid, you're missing him in the room.
Yes. They have Blake Camo on the top line now. Blake Camo.
And he's not doing
What
badly
about Bo Bennett?
because he's with Crosby. Bo Bennett,
Yeah.
he did great in that Montreal game. with Downey. They seem to have some pretty decent chemistry there. I know the plan was, even for the past 2 years, was they wanted to put Bennett in with Crosby to be his left winger. Right now, I don't know if they're going to do that because he and Downey. Yeah, I don't know. It's only like 1 or 2 games, but just based on that one last game, I don't think you should split them up. Keep them together, give them a try, see what they can do. Like Colton said, you can put anybody, any kind of pawn in with Crosby, and they'll do well.
Right. Well, I think that's such a key point for Pittsburgh, because if you look at any Stanley Cup winner within recent history, there are always teams that have like these 3 or 4 lines that they can throw at you.
Depth is the new formula for winning cups.
It really is.
And I just did a quick fact check. Fleury's stats to date: .930 save percentage and goals against of .198 with 4 shutouts.
Those are Vezina Trophy winner
11 wins.
numbers right there.
Definitely.
Yeah, but Pack has a good point. You got to carry it into the second season.
Exactly, and
So-
on the topic of depth, you're talking a team with quite a bit of depth. They didn't look like they'd have a lot of depth early in the year, but a lot of the guys that we expected to be sort of mediocre have kind of stepped up and proven us wrong.
Because when you look at them on
Downey in
paper, they look like a
particular.
2-line team.
And now they've got, who is Nick Spalling?
Used to play for Nashville.
And I had never even heard of the guy. He's playing with Malkin now, Malkin and Hornquist. I kind of like what they've done moving Hornquist down to that second line. It really adds a lot more offensive prowess to Malkin's unit instead of stacking the Crosby line all the time.
Right.
It has Kunitz and Crosby as one offensive threat, Malkin and Hornquist as the other, with a couple other guys who can also put the puck in the net in Blake Comeau and Nick Spalling. Along with that, they've actually got Brandon Sutter on the third line, who's a solid third line center with Steve Downey, who's been playing exceptionally well. So they've got the depth in place. They've got Letang playing really well. Mata is back from that surgery. He was hot before he left,
Right.
and I'd expect nothing less than him to continue. They've got Ehrhoff, who really hasn't done much offensively yet, but typically he's a good offensive player, fantasy-wise especially, and
More responsible defensively than you might think, too. I remember from his days in Vancouver. There's another aspect to winning a cup, too, besides depth, which is your best players have to be your best players in the playoffs.
and
So,
Crosby-
speaking of Crosby,
yeah,
does he still have the it factor that he can produce greatness when it matters most? Because he obviously did have it. He won a cup, scores the goal to win the gold medal, but last few years, Pittsburgh's been a playoff disappointment. I know Fleury has to take some of the blame for that, but there's also been instances where Crosby maybe hasn't sort of produced the way that we thought that he might. So
Yeah, and like you can't blame it all on Sidney Crosby.
No.
But when it comes down to it, if you have a superstar on your team, he has to be a superstar because you base your team around that. And if he doesn't play like a superstar, you're not going to win the cup. So our question to you guys, or my question to all 3 of you, I guess, no Stanley Cup since 2009. We've already discussed that we think Pittsburgh has a team that can win this year. They've got all the pieces they need, provided Fleury plays well. They've got him some psychological training, and he's looked good to date, although it is still the regular season. All things aside from Fleury, is Crosby going to be able to step up and be a 1.5 to 2 points per game kind of guy like he's capable of doing in the regular season? Can he do that in the playoffs and lead this team to victory in 2014, 2015?
Not in the finals. He can get them to the finals, but when it comes to pressure situations, Crosby is a choker. And I know people are going to be looking at me and going, he scored the game-winning goal for Team Canada. I think that was luck. I think that was a fantastic pass by Ginla. Let's go to the Olympics. So 2010. The quarterfinals, semifinals, and the finals. In all those 3 games, how many points did Crosby have?
I believe 1.
1.
That goal, yeah.
In last year's Olympics, the whole tournament, he got how many points? 3.
You get off to a
The
slow
whole
start.
tournament,
Yeah.
no points in the quarterfinals, no points in the semifinals, and he got 1 goal in the finals. The year they won the Stanley Cup, they won it without Sidney Crosby in the finals. How many points did he get in the finals? 3, and he was a -3.
Malkin was more of the standout.
Malkin was the guy.
But
I don't think Crosby can. I don't know if it's that he chokes or if that the different. Sidney Crosby, I think, has just as much skill, if not more skill, than Wayne Gretzky had. But Gretzky had the vision. I don't think Crosby's got that vision. And I know it's a really bold statement, and I know it's a very pro Crosby city that we have here or province. But That's my thoughts, and I don't see that he can really do it when it counts in the finals.
Wow.
I like that because I feel like the other three of us are going to disagree with that, and I didn't want all four of us to have the same opinion, so I'm happy that somebody took the other side.
Ian, what do you
I'll
think?
look at it from this way: is the way I see it is if Sid demands a lot of attention on the ice. So yeah, he may not put up the numbers, but when he's on the ice, there's at least two guys covering him, which means that the other players on the ice have an advantage against the remaining players on the other team.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, yeah, you're right. I mean, you make good points. He doesn't sometimes put up the offensive numbers when it counts, but you have to remember how the other teams look at him when he's on the ice. Every player on that ice knows when he's on the ice.
Yes.
Yeah, I
So
was kind of looking at it that way as well. Like the big games at the Olympics, he's playing against some of the best defense in the world, and they're going to be keying on him. His line's going to be shut down by whoever he's playing against. Same thing in the Cup final. He's in the Cup final playing against theoretically the best team in the Western Conference,
Yeah.
which would theoretically have exceptional defense, and they would key on him. Maybe that's why Malkin outperformed Crosby, because they're all shutting Crosby down, leaving Malkin to get all the points.
But if he's as good a player as everybody says he is, shouldn't he be able to produce those points even against the other team's top defenses?
Yes, because if
And
you
he
can,
does that in the regular season on a
Right.
consistent basis. So
Yeah.
I see where you're coming from. Why can't he do it in the playoffs?
Got to carry over to the playoffs.
Yeah.
it's the ability to produce greatness when you need it the most. I mean, I think back to Gretzky. There's so many examples that you could reference as to when he did that. The '87 Canada Cup, just as an example. You're not going to get greater pressure, I don't think, than playing the Soviet Union in an international setting for
In the
something that really
80s.
matters in the '80s.
Yeah.
And he had arguably the best game of his entire career in Game 2 of the finals.
Yeah.
I can't remember what his stats were, 3 assists, 4 assists, but he always talks about it as being his best game. Toronto when they play LA in Game 7 of the semifinals. Just the last few years, watching Pittsburgh in the playoffs, and it's getting down to like Game 6 and Game 7, and I'm blanking here, but who did they lose to last year? I think it was
The Rangers.
The Rangers, yeah, that's right.
They're losing to teams
Crosby,
that they
take
shouldn't
over
be
now.
losing to.
Like, take this game over, and it just doesn't seem.
The Gretzky
Is that
comparison
happening?
is unfair, I think, because Gretzky played at a different time. Obviously, we all know this. Gretzky was like the Michael Jordan of hockey in that he saw a game faster than anybody else when the game was changing. He was the first person to get there when it was changing.
Definitely.
So he was able to excel at that time. Not taking anything away from him, he's the best hockey player in the world ever. But I think that comparing Sid to Gretzky sometimes can be unfair. It's a different game. And I think that, I think Sid does have what it takes. I think that he's stronger than Gretzky ever was. He's one of the strongest players on the ice. And he's one of the fastest players on the ice. And he may not have the same vision, but he definitely makes up for it physically. So even though he's a small guy, you'd be surprised how strong he is on the ice.
Do you guys think there's anything to the philosophy that says that Crosby tries too hard in the regular season? Because we talked about earlier how LA, for instance, a team like LA, coached by Darryl Sutter, will pace themselves. And they won't always have these great regular seasons, but they'll peak towards the end of the season and then certainly into the playoffs. Whereas Crosby, I mean, look at what he's doing now. He's tied for the league in scoring. That's what it's always like, as long as he's healthy. And Pittsburgh's having a great regular season, but Crosby just seems to be one of these guys that won't pace himself, and he will go all out all the time. So by the time the playoffs roll around, maybe he's a little burnt out. Do you guys think there's anything to that?
I think there is. He seems to give it 100% every game that he plays, night in and night out. But if I recall, the coach will sit him for the last game or the last maybe 2 games during the regular season, and I don't think it was just last year where he had maintenance time. I think it's a fairly regular thing. So he should be getting at least a little bit of rest to slightly recharge his batteries before playoff time.
And I don't know. Steve frequently alludes to this where he says Crosby goes too hard in the regular season or what have you. But the conditioning these guys go through these days, there's no reason why another 20 games should be that grueling on a body in that good of shape.
Not based on what's at stake.
Right.
He's
Stanley Cup, they all want to win it.
extremely he's probably one of the most fit players in the entire league in the world even. So to say that playing too hard in the regular season takes away from his playoff performance, I don't know if that's a valid point, because every other player also plays 80 games or 82 games that season, and they're playing just as hard as Crosby is. He just appears to be playing harder because he gets so many points because he's that much better than everybody else.
We're going to have to wrap this up, I
Yeah,
think.
we got to
here.
wrap this up. We're going a little overtime.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a
Great
mixed
conversation.
opi-
I
a
think
mixed
he does
opinion.
have what it takes. But
Pittsburgh has what it takes. Crosby, it's up in the air.
He's the man.
We'll maybe get to this at a later date. Thanks for coming in, guys. Let's quickly wrap it up with
Top cheddar, you blew
Top
it.
cheddar, you blew it. All right, my top cheddar. Let me just. Oh, jeez, I really blew this. There we go. Top cheddar. Steve, what's yours?
Grosnick, San Jose Sharks third stringer, who is now their backup because Stalock's out. So his very first game ever in the NHL against Carolina, he records a 2-0 shutout, a 45-save shutout that moved his father to tears in,
That's right.
in the
Jeez.
crowd. A heartwarming moment. So
awesome.
he's my top cheddar.
All right, Steve, thanks for taking mine. I'm gonna have to quickly come up. We probably should have. See, this is why we should talk about these before the podcast starts. We need to stop winging it. Okay, top cheddar.
Do you want a weird one? I'll give you one.
There we go.
Phil Kessel. And I'll say why. And my friends that have fans know that they would shoot me for saying that. But the jersey throwing incidents.
Right.
Phil
I was
Kessel.
going to give that as my you blew it.
Phil Kessel, fans blew it for sure, but Phil Kessel said something I thought was pretty, poignant, and he said, fair enough to boo us and fair enough to throw your jersey for the players on the ice, but you're disrespecting the shirt, you're disrespecting the greats that came before us. So I forget exactly how he quoted it in his interview, but for once I thought, wow, that was pretty decent of Phil to come up with that and actually stick up for the jersey itself as opposed to the players on the ice.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. The media in Toronto can be unfair,
Yeah.
and it's reminiscent of what used to happen in Vancouver sometimes. I'm sure you remember. They're so fickle and
Yeah.
so bandwagony that they're playing well, and all of a sudden they're great, and as soon as they lose 2 or 3, it's like, this guy needs to go, and
Yeah.
what's wrong with the Canucks? And Toronto was like that times 5.
Yeah. I hate Kessel's face, but I mean, it's good to...
All right, moving on quickly. I'm just gonna say my top cheddar's got to be Ian's mustache. That thing is looking pretty
Thank you.
nice, pretty dirty,
It's
but
NHL ready, buddy.
This
You need to
thing-
get back on the ice.
It's coming pretty good.
that's thick.
Hey?
That's a handlebar if I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
Anyway, my you blew it for the week. I've held on to this one ever since Ottawa's first game of the week, and that goes out to Craig Anderson, playing against Calgary. Your team's really making a valiant comeback, and then twice in the same game, you mishandle the puck, give it to the opposition, and give up open net goals, losing 4-2. Looks like those 2 goals you cost your team may have been the difference in 2 points, so you blew it.
In an otherwise sterling season, that was definitely a blip.
He had been so great. Although on the plus side, it gave Leonard the chance to start last night, and he looked excellent against Nashville.
Admirable. What a win for Ottawa, 3-2 over Nashville. And speaking of Nashville, you blew it to all you fantasy owners out there who still don't own Mike Ribeiro. Because last I checked, only 39% ownership? Are you kidding me? That is one of the best lines in hockey. Neil, Ribeiro, and Forsberg. As I can attest, I still have Ribeiro. I just traded away Forsberg so I could get a decent goalie.
To me.
to Mac over here. Pick up Mike Ribeiro, man. The guy's been awesome. Varlamov for wearing the Putin shirt. What are we doing here? You want to cue up the music, don't you?
Yeah, cue the music. Just
Cue it up.
Fade it in.
For wearing the Putin shirt. Probably not the most politically correct thing to do. I don't know if you guys saw the photo on Twitter, but that wasn't really all that cool, maybe. And then Slava Voinov for getting charged with domestic abuse.
You got a lot on your plate over there.
Yeah.
See, you're really well
Well, Micah
researched.
Besa.
I had one thing set up and you took it from me, so I look like the big idiot this week. Anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in.
At
Thanks
least
to
you
our...
don't have salsa encrusted on your pants, so.
Yeah, that was the early you blew it. All right, guys, thanks again for tuning in to episode 8.
Thanks,
Big
Ian.
thanks to
Thanks,
Ian.
Zach.
Big thanks
Good
to
job,
Zach.
you guys.
Tune in on Twitter at Weekly Puck Off. Send us emails to weeklypuckoff@gmail.com. I just realized we didn't get to our one question that we had from our viewer.
Let's table that for next week.
So thanks, Brennan, for giving us a question. We'll get to that next week, I promise. Finally, you can follow us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, which is the Weekly Puck Off. And as always,
Oh, fuck off!